The bourbon burned going down, but not as much as the truth was about to. I sat in my basement office at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, rain hammering the windows of our suburban Portland home like bullets. My name's Jack Anderson, and if you'd asked me that morning, I would have told you I had the perfect life. Marketing executive, beautiful wife, 2 grown kids, mortgage almost paid off. The American dream wrapped up in a neat little package with a bow on top. If life hands you lemons, I muttered to myself, reaching for my laptop, it's probably because you deserve the scurvy. That's the kind of dark humor that got me through 40 years on this planet. Clara always said I was too cynical, but Clara said a lot of things that were starting to make less sense these days. My laptop was upstairs charging, so I grabbed Clara's MacBook from her desk. She'd left it open again, something about trusting your spouse. I needed to finish a campaign proposal for a client meeting tomorrow morning, and my files were backed up on the shared drive. The screen flickered to life, showing her desktop. Organized as always, folders labeled with surgical precision. Work projects, family photos, financial documents, and one that caught my eye, best moments with my loved one. I smiled despite my exhaustion. Maybe Clara wasn't as cold as she'd seemed lately. Maybe she'd been putting together a surprise anniversary video or something romantic. We'd been married 18 years next month, and things had been distant. She worked late constantly, traveled for her consulting firm every other week, and when she was home, she spent most of her time on her phone. I clicked the folder, expecting to see photos of our family vacations, our wedding, maybe videos of the kids when they were little. Instead, I found 15 video files with timestamps from the past 6 months. The first one was labeled Vananmi Hotel, Boston, _March 15.mov. My stomach dropped like a stone in a deep well. Van. Evan Pierce. Clara's colleague at Morrison Consulting. The guy she'd mentioned was helping her with the Henderson account. The fitness freak who posted shirtless photos on Instagram and drove a cherry red Corvette like he was compensating for something. My finger hovered over the trackpad. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. But I'd already seen enough to know my marriage was over. The question was just how brutal the details would be. I clicked. The video opened with Clara's laugh, that musical sound I'd fallen in love with in college. But she wasn't laughing with me. She was in a hotel room I didn't recognize, wearing lingerie I'd never seen, doing things with Evan Pierce that she hadn't done with me in years. I slammed the laptop shut so hard I thought I might have cracked the screen. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped steel cables around my ribs and was slowly turning the crank. I opened the laptop again, hoping I'd imagined it, hoping it was some kind of sick joke or mistake. But there were 14 more videos. I watched parts of 3 more before I had to run to the bathroom and throw up everything I'd eaten since breakfast. When I came back, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand, I stared at that folder like it was a coiled rattlesnake. 18 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, joint bank accounts, a life built together brick by brick, and she'd been systematically demolishing it for months while I worked late to pay for her business trips to screw her colleague in hotel rooms across New England. The timestamps told the story. March through August. 5 months of betrayal, documented in high definition, stored on the laptop I'd bought her for Christmas. I heard Clara's car in the driveway. She was home from her client dinner in Boston. I had about 30 seconds to decide how to handle this. Confront her now, pretend I'd never seen it, file for divorce tomorrow morning. Instead, I did something that would change everything. I copied the entire folder to a flash drive. Then I closed the laptop, walked upstairs, and kissed my wife hello when she came through the door, her hair slightly mussed, her lipstick gone, smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. "How was dinner?" I asked. "Boring," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Just business stuff. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was now. The next morning, Clara was already gone when I woke up. A note on the kitchen counter said she had an early meeting. Would be home late. Don't wait up. The same note she'd been leaving for months, with minor variations. I sat at our kitchen table, drinking coffee that tasted like ash, staring at that note and wondering how long she'd been lying to my face. How many times had she kissed me goodbye before going to meet him? How many times had she come home and slept next to me after being with him. My phone buzzed. A text from my boss, Richard. Need the Morrison campaign proposal by noon. Don't screw this up, Jack. Morrison. Clara's company. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. I drove to my office in downtown Portland, going through the motions of my normal routine. Traffic on I-295, NPR on the radio, large coffee from the Starbucks in the lobby. Everything exactly the same as yesterday. Except yesterday, I was married to a woman I loved. And today, I was married to a stranger who'd been filming herself cheating on me. At my desk, I opened my laptop and tried to focus on work. The Morrison campaign was for their new Portland office expansion. I was supposed to create marketing materials that positioned them as a trustworthy, family-oriented company that valued long-term relationships. I started laughing and couldn't stop. My assistant, Jenny, poked her head into my office. You okay, Jack? Perfect, I said, wiping tears from my eyes. Just thinking about the irony of corporate messaging. She gave me a concerned look and closed the door. I spent the morning crafting the most brilliant marketing campaign of my career. Taglines about trust, loyalty, and the importance of transparency in business relationships. I even included a section about how Morrison Consulting understood that strong partnerships were built on honesty and mutual respect. By 11:30, I had a presentation that would make Richard weep with joy and probably land me a promotion. Then I had an idea that was either brilliant or insane. I opened Clara's laptop, which she'd left at home in her rush to get to her early meeting. The folder was still there, all 15 videos of my wife's extracurricular activities. I selected the most explicit one, the one where she was doing things that would make a porn star blush, and I embedded it into slide 15 of my Morrison presentation. Right after the slide about building trust through transparency, I saved the file and emailed it to Richard with a note. Morrison campaign ready for your review. I think this really captures the essence of their corporate culture. Then I grabbed my jacket and walked out of the office. Where are you going? Jenny called after me. To the gym, I said. I need to hit something. My phone started ringing before I reached the elevator. I turned it off. Coach Tommy Reddick's gym hadn't changed in 15 years. Same cracked leather heavy bags, same smell of sweat and liniment, same inspirational posters with sayings like, pain is weakness leaving the body, and champions are made when nobody's watching. Tommy looked up from wrapping some kid's hands when I walked in. He was 65, built like a fire hydrant, and had been training fighters since before I was born. He'd also been my friend since I was 25 and stupid enough to think I could be a boxer. Jack Anderson, he said, grinning. Thought you'd forgotten about us working folks. Never, Coach. I grabbed a pair of gloves from the wall. Mind if I work out some frustrations? That's what the bags are for. He studied my face. But you look like you want to work out more than frustrations. You look like you want to work out some rage. Tommy always could read people. Came from 30 years of training guys who used boxing to deal with everything from poverty to addiction to prison records. I spent an hour beating the hell out of a heavy bag, throwing combinations until my shoulders burned and my knuckles were raw inside the gloves. Tommy watched for a while, then came over with water and a towel. Want to talk about it? My wife's been cheating on me for 5 months, I said, not looking at him. Found video evidence last night. Tommy whistled low. That's rough, son. What are you going to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to confront her, part of me wants to hire a divorce lawyer, and part of me wants to burn their whole world down. Which part's winning? I thought about the video I'd embedded in my presentation, which Richard had probably seen by now. My phone was still off, but I could imagine the messages piling up. The burning part, I think. Tommy nodded. Can't say I blame you. But here's some free advice from an old man who's seen a lot of fights. If you want to win, don't just hit back. Hit where it hurts most. What do you mean? People like your wife and her boyfriend, they care about their image, their reputation, their status. That's their weak spot. You go after their bodies, you might get arrested. You go after their pride, you destroy them and stay out of jail. I was starting to understand why Tommy had been such a good trainer. He didn't just teach you how to throw punches, he taught you how to think like a fighter. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I turned it back on without thinking about it. 17 missed calls from Richard, 23 text messages, and 1 voicemail from Clara. Jack, what the hell did you do? My entire office saw that presentation. Call me back right now. I looked at Tommy. I think I just threw the first punch. Good, he said. Now let's figure out how to throw the second one. I drove home through downtown Portland, taking the long way to think. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray and threatening, matching my mood perfectly. My phone kept buzzing with calls and texts, but I ignored them all. Clara's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. So was a red Corvette. Evan was in my house. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the windows, imagining what was happening inside. Were they panicking? Planning? Packing? Part of me wanted to march in there and confront them both, but Tommy's advice echoed in my head. Hit where it hurts most. Instead, I drove to the coffee shop on Congress Street where Clara and her best friend Megan always met for their weekly gossip sessions. If I was going to wage psychological warfare, I needed intelligence. The grind was busy for a Tuesday afternoon, filled with college students and remote workers typing on laptops. I ordered a coffee and found a corner table with a good view of the whole place. I didn't have to wait long. Megan Firth walked in at exactly 3 o'clock, same as every Tuesday for the past 2 years. She was Clara's college roommate, maid of honor at our wedding, and godmother to our kids. She was also a corporate lawyer who specialized in hostile takeovers, which should have been my first clue about her character. She ordered her usual skinny vanilla latte and sat at her usual table by the window. 5 minutes later, Clara rushed in, looking frantic. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. "This is a disaster," Clara said, not bothering to lower her voice. "The whole office saw it. Richard called an emergency meeting. They're talking about suspension, pending investigation." "Calm down," Megan said. "How did Jack get the video?" "I don't know. I thought I was careful. I thought he never used my laptop." "Well, obviously you weren't careful enough. What did you tell Evan?" "He's freaking out too. His wife saw the email chain. She's threatening to take the kids and move back to California." I almost felt sorry for Evan. Almost. "Look," Megan said, leaning forward. "This is bad, but it's not fatal. You need to control the narrative. Make Jack look like the villain here. Invasion of privacy, violation of trust, maybe even corporate espionage since he sent it to his boss." "How do I do that?" "Easy. You've been documenting his behavior for months, remember? The drinking, the mood swings, the way he's been neglecting you and the kids. Paint him as an unstable husband who violated your privacy and tried to destroy your career out of spite." My blood turned to ice water. They'd been planning this, not just the affair, but the aftermath. They had a strategy for destroying me if they got caught. "What about the insurance policy?" Clara asked. "That's our nuclear option," Megan said. "We only use it if everything else fails. But if we have to, we can make Jack disappear from your life completely. Financially, socially, professionally. He'll be lucky to get a job managing a McDonald's when we're done with him." I stopped the recording. I'd heard enough. As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You don't know who you're messing with, Jack. Back off now, or you'll regret it." I looked across the coffee shop at Megan, who was typing on her phone. I texted back, "Bring it on. I've got nothing left to lose." That evening, I sat in my car outside Evan's apartment complex in South Portland, watching his red Corvette gleam under the parking lot lights. It was his pride and joy, a 2019 Z06 that he'd posted about on social media at least 50 times. He washed it every weekend, detailed it monthly, and probably loved it more than he'd ever loved any woman, including my wife. I'd stopped at Home Depot on the way over and bought a few supplies. Nothing illegal, nothing that would get me arrested. Just some items that would send a message. The apartment complex was quiet. Most people were inside having dinner, watching TV, living their normal lives. I envied them. 24 hours ago, I'd been one of them. I walked casually to the Corvette, looking around to make sure no one was watching. The car was parked under a security light, but the camera was pointed at the building entrance, not the parking spaces. First, I took out my keys and carved "Cheater" into the driver's side door. The metal scraped against metal with a satisfying screech. Then I walked around to the passenger side and added "Homewrecker" for balance. Next came the fish. I'd bought 2 pounds of salmon heads from the seafood counter at Whole Foods. The clerk had given me a strange look, but I'd explained I was making soup stock, which was technically true if you considered revenge a type of soup. I popped the hood and distributed the fish heads around the engine compartment. In this August heat, they'd start smelling within hours and be absolutely rancid by tomorrow afternoon. Finally, I took out a can of spray foam insulation and filled the exhaust pipe. It would harden overnight, and when Evan tried to start the car, the back pressure would cause all kinds of expensive problems. I was walking back to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. "Hey, what are you doing to my car?" I turned around. A security guard was walking toward me, flashlight in hand. He was young, probably college-aged, and looked more curious than threatening. "Just admiring it," I said. "Beautiful car. The owner must really love it." The guard looked at the Corvette, then back at me. In the dim light, he probably couldn't see the scratches or smell the fish yet. "Yeah, well, you can't loiter in the parking lot. Residents only." "Of course, just leaving." I started walking toward my car, but the guard followed me. "Wait a minute. Let me see some ID." This was not part of the plan. "Is there a problem, officer?" I asked, trying to sound innocent. "You're not a resident, and you were messing around that Corvette. I need to see some identification." I could show him my license, answer his questions, and probably talk my way out of this. Or I could run. I ran. The guard shouted behind me, but he was wearing heavy boots and a utility belt that slowed him down. I sprinted between the apartment buildings, through a playground, and into the woods that bordered the complex. My heart was pounding, and I was breathing hard by the time I reached my car, which I'd parked on a side street 3 blocks away. I sat behind the wheel for 5 minutes, listening for sirens, but heard nothing except my own ragged breathing. As I drove home, I started laughing. Not the bitter laugh from this morning, but genuine amusement. For the first time in months, I felt alive. I felt like I was fighting back instead of just taking punches. My phone buzzed with a text from Clara. "Where are you? We need to talk." I texted back, "Having dinner with a friend, don't wait up." Then I turned off my phone and drove to the 24-hour diner on Forest Avenue. I had planning to do, and I was going to need coffee. The West Side Diner hadn't changed since 1987, which was exactly why I liked it. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floor, pie that could cure depression, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. I ordered the meatloaf special and spread my laptop, notebook, and phone across the booth like I was planning a military campaign. Which, in a way, I was. I started with social media. Claire and Evan had been careful not to post photos together, but they hadn't been careful enough. I found 3 instances where they'd checked into the same restaurant on the same night, 2 hotel conferences where they'd both posted pictures from the same bar, a hiking trail in New Hampshire where they'd both uploaded photos within an hour of each other. Individually, these could be coincidences. Together, they painted a clear picture. I screenshot everything and saved it to a folder labeled Evidence. Next, I went through Claire's credit card statements, which I could access through our joint account. Hotel charges in cities where she claimed to be meeting clients. Restaurant bills for 2 and she said she was eating alone. A charge at Victoria's Secret 3 days before her Boston trip, for lingerie I'd never seen. The paper trail was damning. But Megan's words from the coffee shop kept echoing in my head. Insurance policy. Make Jack disappear. Nuclear option. What did they have on me that they thought was so devastating? I opened my own social media accounts and started scrolling backwards, looking for anything they could twist into evidence of bad behavior. A few photos from company happy hours where I looked drunk. Some sarcastic comments about marriage that could be taken out of context. A check-in at the boxing gym at 2 a.m. after a particularly bad fight with Clara. Nothing that seemed nuclear option-worthy. My phone buzzed. Clara calling again. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. "Jack, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But what you did today was cruel and humiliating. We need to talk about this like adults. I'm willing to work on our marriage if you are. Please come home." The performance was almost convincing. If I hadn't heard her conversation with Megan, I might have believed she was genuinely remorseful. I called Tommy at the gym. "Jack? It's almost midnight. What's wrong? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Have you ever seen Claire at the gym? Maybe with someone who wasn't me?" There was a long pause. Why are you asking? Because I'm trying to figure out how long this has been going on, and I think she might have brought him there. Another pause. Yeah, I've seen her. About 3 months ago, she came in with some pretty boy and expensive workout gear. Said she was thinking about joining, wanted to check the place out. What did they do? Mostly just talk to each other. He was showing off doing bicep curls with weights that were too heavy, trying to impress her. She was eating it up. I figured it was some midlife crisis thing. Didn't think it was my business to tell you. I wish you had. Yeah, me too. Look, Jack, I'm sorry. I should have said something. It's not your fault, coach, but I need another favor. Can you ask around? See if anyone else saw them together? I'm building a case. A legal case? A social case. I'm going to destroy their reputations the same way they destroyed my marriage. Be careful, son. Revenge is a dangerous game. So is cheating on your husband. I hung up and went back to my laptop. If Claire and Evan thought they could humiliate me and then control the narrative, they were about to learn how wrong they were. I created fake social media accounts and started following their friends, colleagues, and family members. I joined local Facebook groups where they were members. I signed up for newsletters from their gym, their favorite restaurants, their professional organizations. By 2 a.m., I had a network of digital surveillance that would make the NSA jealous. And I was just getting started. I woke up Wednesday morning on the diner's booth, my neck stiff and my laptop battery dead. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a name tag that said Dolores, was refilling my coffee cup. Rough night, honey? You could say that. Wife trouble? I looked at her, surprised. How did you know? 30 years of serving coffee to heartbroken men. You all have the same look, like someone stole your favorite dog and kicked you in the stomach. That's actually pretty accurate. She sat down across from me. The diner was empty except for a trucker at the counter and a college student studying in the corner booth. You want some free advice from an old woman who's seen it all? I nodded. Whatever she did, whatever he did, don't let it turn you into someone you're not. Revenge feels good in the moment, but it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. What if they deserve it? Maybe they do. But do you deserve to become the kind of person who dishes it out? I thought about that as I drove home to shower and change clothes. Dolores had a point, but she didn't know the whole story. She didn't know about Megan's insurance policy, or their plan to destroy me if I fought back. Claire's car was gone when I got home. She'd left another note. Gone to work early. We really need to talk tonight. I love you. I crumpled up the note and threw it in the trash. My phone had 43 missed calls and 67 text messages. I scrolled through them while I showered. Most were from Richard, a few from coworkers who'd heard about yesterday's presentation disaster, and several from numbers I didn't recognize. But one text caught my attention. It was from Ross, my 22-year-old son, who was working in Boston for the summer. Dad, what's going on? Mom called crying, said you're having some kind of breakdown. She wants me and Amelia to come home this weekend for an intervention. An intervention. Clara was already spinning the narrative, making me the villain who needed help instead of the victim who'd been betrayed. I called Ross. Dad, are you okay? Mom said you've been acting crazy, that you might be having a mental health crisis. I'm fine, son. Your mother and I are having some problems, but I'm not having a breakdown. She said you humiliated her at work, that you've been drinking too much and staying out all night. What else did she say? That you've been paranoid, accusing her of things she didn't do, and that you violated her privacy by going through her personal files. The narrative was already taking shape. Clara the victim, Jack the unstable husband. It was brilliant, actually. Even if people found out about the affair, they'd assume I'd driven her to it with my erratic behavior. Ross, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your mother has been having an affair with a man named Evan Pierce for the past 5 months. I have video evidence. Everything she's telling you is designed to make me look like the bad guy, so you won't believe me when I tell you the truth. Silence on the other end of the line. Dad, that's a serious accusation. I know it is, and I wouldn't make it if I couldn't prove it. Can you prove it? I thought about the videos, the credit card statements, the social media evidence I'd compiled. Yes. Then why haven't you just confronted her? Why all this other stuff? Because she and her friend Megan have some kind of plan to destroy me if I fight back. They called it their insurance policy. I'm trying to figure out what they have on me before I make my next move. Another long pause. Dad, this sounds really paranoid. Maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist, or... I'm not paranoid, I shouted, then immediately regretted it. Shouting at my son wasn't going to convince him I was stable. Look, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I know how this sounds, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I don't know, Dad. This is really scary. After I hung up, I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. Clara was good, better than I'd given her credit for. She was systematically turning my own children against me, making them think I was the problem. But she'd made one mistake. She'd mentioned Megan's insurance policy to our son, probably without realizing it. If Ross repeated that conversation to Amelia, and if I could figure out what they were referring to, I might be able to turn this around. I opened my laptop and started searching through my old emails, looking for anything Megan might have saved or screenshot, anything that could be taken out of context and used against me. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The email was buried in my sent folder from 3 years ago, during the worst period of my marriage. Claire and I had been fighting constantly. She'd been cold and distant, and I'd been drinking too much and staying out late. I'd sent the message to my college buddy Mike Chen at 2 a.m. after a particularly brutal argument. I swear to God, Mike, sometimes I think about what it would be like if Clara just disappeared. Not dead, just gone. No more fighting, no more walking on eggshells, no more pretending to be happy. I could start over, maybe find someone who actually wants to be married to me instead of just tolerating my existence. I know that makes me sound like a terrible person, but I can't be the only guy who's had these thoughts, right? Mike had responded with sympathy and advice about marriage counseling. We'd exchanged a few more emails about relationships and divorce, and then Claire and I had gone through a good period, and I'd forgotten all about it. But Mike Chen was Megan's ex-boyfriend from law school. They dated for 2 years and stayed friends afterward. If Megan had access to his email account, or if she'd asked him about my state of mind during that rough patch, I kept searching and found 2 more emails that could be weaponized. One where I joked about hiding money from Clara in a separate account. I never actually did it, but the joke could be presented as evidence of financial deception. Another where I'd complained about Clara's spending and said I felt like a paycheck with legs. Individually, these emails painted a picture of an unhappy husband venting to a friend. But in the hands of a skilled lawyer like Megan, they could be presented as evidence of a man planning to abandon his family, hide assets, and emotionally abuse his wife. The insurance policy wasn't just about destroying my reputation. It was about destroying me in divorce court. I called Mike. Jack, how are you, buddy? I heard through the grapevine that you and Clara are having some problems. What grapevine? Megan Firth called me yesterday, said Clara was worried about your mental health, and asked if I'd noticed any warning signs over the years. My stomach dropped. What did you tell her? Nothing specific, just that you'd gone through a rough patch a few years back, like most married couples do. Why? Mike, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Clara has been cheating on me for months. Megan is helping her build a case against me for the divorce. Those emails I sent you 3 years ago, they're going to use them to make me look like an abusive husband who is planning to abandon his family. That's insane, Jack. Those were just private conversations between friends. You were venting, not planning anything. I know that, and you know that. But a divorce lawyer could spin them differently. Did you save those emails? I think so. I never delete anything. Can you forward them to me? I need to see exactly what they have to work with. Sure, but Jack, are you sure about all this? I mean, Claire's always seemed like such a nice person, and Megan's a lawyer. She wouldn't do something unethical like that. A week ago, I would have agreed with you, but I've learned a lot about people I thought I knew. After Mike sent me the emails, I sat in my car outside a Starbucks and read through them with fresh eyes. Megan was right. They were devastating. Taken out of context, they made me sound like a cold, calculating husband who resented his wife and was planning to leave her financially ruined. In a divorce proceeding, these emails could cost me half my assets, my relationship with my kids, and possibly my job if they were leaked to my employer. But they could also cost Clara and Megan everything if I played this right. I called Tommy at the gym. "Coach, remember what you said about hitting where it hurts most?" "Yeah. I think I'm ready to throw that second punch." Friday afternoon, I sat in my rental car outside Morrison Consulting's downtown Portland office, watching employees stream out of the building for the weekend. Clara emerged at 5:30, looking tired and stressed. She'd been suspended pending investigation, but apparently she was still allowed to clean out her office. Evan's red Corvette was parked in the visitor section, though it looked different than it had Tuesday night. The scratches had been buffed out, and I assumed he'd dealt with the fish situation, though I hoped the smell lingered. I followed them to the Eastland Park Hotel, staying 3 cars back in traffic. They parked in the hotel garage and went inside together. Bold of them, considering Clara's career was hanging by a thread because of their relationship. But that boldness was about to be their downfall. I'd spent the past 2 days preparing for this moment. I'd rented a car so they wouldn't recognize mine. I'd bought a small digital camera with a zoom lens. I'd researched the hotel layout and identified all the entrances and exits. Most importantly, I'd created a group email list that included everyone in Clara's professional and social network: her colleagues, her clients, her college friends, our neighbors, her book club, her yoga instructor, and the parents from our kids' high school. I waited in the lobby, pretending to read a newspaper until I saw them get on the elevator together. The display showed they stopped at the 7th floor. 20 minutes later, I knocked on every door on the 7th floor until I found the right room. I could hear Clara's voice through the door and Evan's laugh. I set up the camera in the hallway, pointed at their door, and activated the motion sensor. Then I went back to the lobby and waited. They came down at 8:30 looking satisfied and relaxed. They had dinner in the hotel restaurant, holding hands across the table like they were a real couple, instead of 2 people destroying 2 families. I took pictures through the restaurant window. Clara feeding Evan a bite of dessert, Evan kissing her hand, both of them looking happier than I'd seen Clara look in years. The photos were crystal clear, impossible to deny or explain away. At 10:15, they went back upstairs. The motion sensor camera captured them kissing passionately outside the hotel room door before going inside. I retrieved the camera at midnight and drove home with enough evidence to destroy both their reputations permanently. Clara wasn't home. According to her text, she was staying at Megan's house for the weekend, to think about our marriage. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I spent Saturday morning editing the photos and video footage, creating a slideshow that told the story of their affair in chronological order. Hotel receipts, restaurant photos, social media check-ins, and finally, the footage from last night. Then I composed an email. "Dear friends and colleagues of Clara Anderson, I'm writing to inform you that my wife Clara has been having an extramarital affair with her colleague Evan Pierce for the past 5 months. I've attached photographic evidence of their relationship, including documentation of their activities as recently as last night. I'm sharing this information because Clara and her friend Megan Firth have been spreading false rumors about my mental health and behavior in an attempt to cover up Clara's infidelity. They've been telling people that I'm unstable, paranoid, and potentially dangerous. The truth is that I discovered Clara's affair earlier this week and have been gathering evidence to protect myself in the inevitable divorce proceedings. Clara and Megan have been planning to use private emails I sent to a friend 3 years ago to paint me as an abusive husband, while simultaneously covering up Clara's ongoing betrayal of our marriage vows. I'm not proud of making this situation public, but I refuse to be destroyed by lies, while the people who betrayed me control the narrative. The attached evidence speaks for itself. Sincerely, Jack Anderson." I attached the slideshow, the hotel receipts, and screenshots of the social media evidence. Then I hovered my finger over the send button. Once I pressed it, there would be no going back. Clara's career would be over. Evan's marriage would be destroyed. Their reputations would be ruined permanently. But they'd been planning to do the same thing to me. I pressed send. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My phone started ringing within minutes of sending the email. Text messages poured in from friends, neighbors, and coworkers, some expressing sympathy, others asking for more details, a few telling me I'd gone too far. But the most satisfying response came from Clara herself. She called at 2 p.m., screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You bastard! How could you do this to me? You've destroyed my entire life." "I destroyed your life?" I said, my voice calm and steady. "That's interesting. I thought you destroyed your own life when you decided to film yourself cheating on your husband. You violated my privacy. You stole private files from my computer. Your computer that I paid for, in the house that I pay the mortgage on, containing videos of you cheating on me with money from our joint bank account. Yeah, I'm really the villain here. Everyone I work with saw those photos. My clients, my friends, my family. Good. Now they know who you really are instead of the lie you've been performing for months." There was a long pause, and when Clara spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculated. "You have no idea what you've just done to yourself, Jack. You think this is over? This is just the beginning. When I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never been born." "Bring it on," I said. "I've got nothing left to lose." She hung up. An hour later, Megan called, "Jack, we need to talk." "I don't think we do." "Yes, we do. What you did today was illegal. Harassment, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Clara could sue you for everything you own." "Let her try. I've got 18 years of marriage, video evidence of her affair, and documentation of her lies to our children and friends. Good luck explaining that to a jury. You also have emails proving you fantasized about Clara disappearing, talked about hiding money from her, and complained about her spending habits. We can paint you as an abusive husband who is planning to abandon his family. 3-year-old emails taken out of context versus 5 months of documented adultery? I like my chances." "What do you want, Jack?" The question caught me off guard. What do I want? To make this go away. To end this before it gets worse for everyone involved. What's it going to take? I thought about it. What did I want? A week ago, I would have said I wanted my marriage back. I wanted my wife to love me again. I wanted my family to be whole, but that was impossible now. Clara had killed our marriage months ago. I'd just finally seen the body. "I want the truth," I said finally. "I want Clara to admit to our kids that she's been cheating. I want her to admit that she and you plan to destroy me to cover it up. And I want both of you to leave me alone." "That's not going to happen." "Then I guess we're going to war." "You can't win a war against us, Jack. We're smarter than you. We have more resources, and we're willing to do things you're not." "We'll see about that." I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, a guy named David Walsh, who'd handled my business contracts for years. I'd never needed a divorce attorney before, but David knew people. "Jack, I heard about what happened. Half the city's talking about it." "Good or bad?" "Mixed. Some people think you went too far, but most people think Clara had it coming. Cheating on your spouse is still considered pretty awful, even in 2023. I need a divorce attorney. The best one you know." "That would be Sarah Martinez. She's expensive, but she's ruthless. If you're going to war, she's who you want in your corner. Set up a meeting for Monday morning." "Jack, are you sure about this? Divorce is ugly under the best circumstances. If Claire and Megan are really planning to fight dirty, then it's a good thing I'm not planning to fight clean." Sunday morning, I woke up to find my front yard covered in toilet paper and my car spray painted with the word "psycho" in red letters. A bag of dog feces had been left on my front porch, and someone had thrown eggs at my windows. Evan's handiwork, no doubt. The man was even more juvenile than I'd thought. I was cleaning egg off my kitchen window when my phone rang. It was Ross. "Dad, what the hell is going on? Mom sent me and Amelia the email you sent out. She's saying you've completely lost your mind." "Did you look at the evidence?" "Yeah, I looked at it, and it's pretty damning. But Dad, sending it to everyone she knows? That's cruel, even if she deserved it. Your mother and Megan were planning to use 3-year-old emails to destroy me in divorce court. They were going to make me look like an abusive husband and take everything I've worked for. This was self-defense." It doesn't look like self-defense. It looks like revenge. He wasn't wrong. But sometimes revenge and justice were the same thing. Ross, I need you and your sister to understand something. Your mother didn't just cheat on me. She planned to destroy me to cover it up. She was willing to turn you both against me, ruin my career, and leave me with nothing. The woman you think you know doesn't exist. I don't know what to believe anymore. Believe the evidence. It doesn't lie. After I hung up, I drove to the gym to work out my frustration. Tommy was there, training a young heavyweight who looked like he could bench press a truck. Heard you caused quite a stir yesterday, Tommy said. Word travels fast. In this town? Hell yes. So, what's your next move? I meet with a divorce lawyer tomorrow. After that, I guess we see what Clara and Megan do. You think they're done? Not even close. They're planning something big. I can feel it. I was right. Monday morning, I woke up to find 2 police cars in my driveway. Detective Sarah Morrison, no relation to Clara's company, was standing on my front porch with a warrant. Jack Anderson, you're under arrest for harassment, stalking, and violation of privacy laws. On whose complaint? Clara Anderson and Evan Pierce. They're claiming you've been following them, taking unauthorized photographs, and distributing private materials without consent. I almost laughed. They were using the legal system to continue their attack, turning my evidence gathering into criminal behavior. I'd like to call my lawyer. You can do that from the station. As they put me in handcuffs, I saw Clara watching from across the street, standing next to Megan's BMW. She wasn't smiling, but there was satisfaction in her eyes. Round 2 to them. But the fight wasn't over. I spent 8 hours in jail before David Walsh arranged bail. The charges were serious enough to potentially cost me my job and my reputation, but weak enough that a good lawyer could probably get them reduced or dismissed. The real damage was to my credibility. Clara and Megan had successfully painted me as an unstable stalker who'd crossed legal lines in pursuit of revenge. Even people who sympathized with me being cheated on were uncomfortable with my methods. We need to be smart about this, Sarah Martinez told me Tuesday morning in her downtown office. She was exactly what David had promised: sharp, expensive, and ruthless. The criminal charges are manageable, but they've given Clara ammunition for the divorce proceedings. What kind of ammunition? She's filing for divorce on grounds of mental cruelty and seeking a restraining order. She's claiming you've been emotionally abusive throughout the marriage, that you've threatened her safety, and that you're an unfit parent. Based on what evidence? The emails from 3 years ago, testimony from Megan about your erratic behavior, and now the criminal charges. It's circumstantial, but it's enough to make you look bad. What about her affair? The videos, the hotel receipts, all of it. Maine is a no-fault divorce state. Her infidelity doesn't matter legally, and she's claiming it was a response to your emotional abuse. She says you drove her to it. I stared out the window at the Portland skyline, feeling like I was losing a game where the rules kept changing. So, what do? We fight back. But we do it legally and strategically. No more vigilante justice. No more public humiliation campaigns. We build a case that shows Clara as a calculating adulteress who's trying to manipulate the system. How? Sarah smiled, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I might have an ally who was smarter than my enemies. By giving them enough rope to hang themselves. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of fighting Clara's narrative directly, we were going to let her overplay her hand. Sarah filed a countersuit alleging fraud, claiming that Clara had used marital assets to fund her affair and had lied about business expenses. We demanded a full audit of her travel receipts and credit card statements. We also subpoenaed Megan's communications with Clara, claiming that as Clara's legal advisor, she had a conflict of interest that invalidated any attorney-client privilege. Most importantly, we requested that Clara undergo a psychological evaluation, claiming that her decision to film her extramarital activities showed poor judgment that might affect her fitness as a parent. The goal isn't to win these motions, Sarah explained. The goal is to make them react emotionally instead of strategically. People like Clara and Megan hate being on the defensive. They'll overreach, and when they do, we'll be ready. She was right. Within a week, Clara and Megan had filed 17 different motions, including a request for emergency spousal support, a claim that I'd hidden assets, and a demand that I undergo anger management counseling. They also made a crucial mistake. They submitted the 3-year-old emails as evidence without redacting Mike Chen's responses, which clearly showed that he'd advised me to seek marriage counseling and had been supportive and concerned about both Clara and me. "Look at this," Sarah said, showing me the court filings. "Mike's responses completely undermine their narrative. He's not responding to an abusive husband planning to abandon his family. He's responding to a friend going through a rough patch in his marriage. So we can use this? We can use all of it. They've submitted so many motions that they've created a paper trail of their own vindictiveness. No judge is going to look at this and see Clara as a victim. They're going to see her as someone trying to weaponize the legal system." The hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. Clara, Megan, and their attorney, a slick guy named Richard Blackwood, who specialized in high-conflict divorces, arrived looking confident and prepared. I arrived with Sarah and a box of evidence that would change everything. Judge Patricia Williams had been on the family court bench for 15 years, and according to Sarah, she had zero tolerance for games, manipulation, or wasted time. She was exactly the kind of judge we wanted for this case. "This is quite a collection of motions," Judge Williams said, looking through the stack of papers. "Mr. Blackwood, would you like to explain why your client has filed 17 separate requests?" Blackwood stood up, smoothing his expensive tie. "Your Honor, my client has been the victim of a sustained campaign of harassment and abuse. Mr. Anderson has stalked her, violated her privacy, destroyed her career, and threatened her safety. We're seeking protection for a woman who fears for her life." "And yet," Judge Williams said, "Mrs. Anderson continued to meet with the subject of her alleged affair even after these supposed threats began. Can you explain that?" Blackwood looked uncomfortable. "Your Honor, the relationship with Mr. Pierce was a response to years of emotional abuse from her husband. My client was seeking comfort and support from a colleague during a difficult time. By filming sexual encounters and storing them on a computer she shared with her husband, those were private moments that Mr. Anderson illegally accessed and distributed without consent." Judge Williams turned to Sarah. "Ms. Martinez, what's your response to these allegations?" Sarah stood up, and I could see why David had recommended her. She commanded the courtroom like a general addressing her troops. "Your Honor, Mrs. Anderson and her advisor, Ms. Firth, have spent months planning a character assassination campaign against my client. They've taken private emails out of context, manufactured evidence of mental instability, and filed frivolous legal motions designed to overwhelm the court and drain Mr. Anderson's resources." She opened our evidence box and pulled out a thick folder. "We have documentation showing that Mrs. Anderson spent over $12,000 of marital assets on her affair, including hotel rooms, dinners, and gifts for Mr. Pierce. We have social media evidence showing that she and Mr. Pierce were planning their encounters weeks in advance. And we have recorded conversations between Mrs. Anderson and Miss Firth discussing their strategy to destroy my client if he discovered the affair." Blackwood jumped up. "Objection! Those recordings were obtained illegally." "Actually," Sarah said, smiling, "they were obtained in a public coffee shop where Mrs. Anderson and Miss Firth were discussing their plans loudly enough for other patrons to hear. My client was simply in the right place at the right time." Judge Williams held up her hand for silence. "I'd like to hear these recordings." Sarah connected her laptop to the courtroom's audio system, and suddenly Clara's voice filled the room. "What about the insurance policy?" "That's our nuclear option. We only use it if everything else fails. But if we have to, we can make Jack disappear from your life completely. Financially, socially, professionally." The judge's expression grew colder as the recording continued. When it finished, she looked directly at Clara. "Mrs. Anderson, would you care to explain what you meant by insurance policy?" Clara looked at Megan, then at Blackwood, then back at the judge. It was just, we were upset. People say things they don't mean when they're emotional." And yet, you proceeded to implement exactly the strategy described in this recording. You used old emails to paint your husband as abusive. You filed criminal charges to damage his credibility. And you've submitted motions designed to financially exhaust him. Your Honor, Blackwood interjected. My client was protecting herself from... Mr. Blackwood, I've heard enough. This court does not appreciate being used as a weapon in someone's revenge campaign. Mrs. Anderson, your behavior has been calculating, manipulative, and frankly, disgusting. You've committed adultery, stolen marital assets, and attempted to destroy your husband's reputation to cover your tracks. Judge Williams shuffled through the papers on her desk, her disgust evident. Here's my ruling. The restraining order is denied. The criminal charges appear to be retaliatory, and I'm recommending they be dropped. Mrs. Anderson, you will return the $12,000 you spent on your affair to the marital estate. You will also pay Mr. Anderson's legal fees for having to defend against these frivolous motions. Clara's face went white. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm awarding temporary custody of any minor children to Mr. Anderson, pending a full psychological evaluation of both parents. Mrs. Anderson, your decision to document your extramarital activities shows a profound lack of judgment that concerns this court. Your Honor, Blackwood said desperately, we request... Mr. Blackwood, your client has wasted enough of this court's time. The next time I see motions like this, I'll be considering sanctions against both you and your client. Judge Williams banged her gavel. This hearing is adjourned. As we walked out of the courtroom, I could hear Clara crying behind us. Megan was arguing with Blackwood in hushed, angry tones. How does it feel? Sarah asked me as we reached the parking garage. Like justice, I said. Finally. But I was wrong. It wasn't over yet. That evening, I was at home for the first time in weeks, sitting in my own living room, drinking my own bourbon, when someone started pounding on my front door. It was Evan Pierce, and he looked like he'd been drinking. Open the door, Anderson! We need to talk! I looked through the peephole. Evan was alone, swaying slightly, his expensive shirt wrinkled and his hair disheveled. His wife had apparently followed through on her threat to leave him, and from the look of things, he wasn't handling it well. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. What do you want, Evan? You destroyed my life, you bastard. My wife took my kids to California. My job fired me. I've got nothing left because of you. You destroyed your own life when you decided to sleep with my wife. She came on to me. She was the one who wanted to make those videos. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. That's between you and Clara. I just exposed what you were already doing. I'm going to sue you for everything you're worth. Good luck with that. I just won in court against much better lawyers than you can afford. Evan's face turned red with rage. You think this is over? You think you've won? I'll make you pay for what you did to me. Go home, Evan. Sleep it off. Find a therapist. Move on with your life. I started to close the door, but Evan threw his shoulder against it, snapping the chain lock. I'm not done talking to you. He stumbled into my living room, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath. He was drunk, angry, and desperate. A dangerous combination. Get out of my house, Evan. Not until you fix this. Call your lawyer, tell them you made it all up, that the videos were fake. I'm not going to do that. Then I'll make you do it. He swung at me, a clumsy right hook that I saw coming from a mile away. Tommy's training kicked in, and I ducked under his punch and landed a solid left to his solar plexus. Evan doubled over, gasping for air. This is your last warning, I said. Leave now or I'm calling the police. Instead of leaving, he straightened up and charged at me like a linebacker. We crashed into my coffee table, sending my bourbon glass flying. Evan was bigger than me, but he was drunk and out of shape. I rolled away from him and got to my feet. You ruined everything, he screamed, swinging wildly. Everything! I backed toward the kitchen, keeping my hands up, looking for an opening. Evan followed me, throwing punches that missed by inches. Your wife ruined everything, I said. I just documented it. That seemed to enrage him even more. He grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter and pointed it at me. Take it back! Call the newspapers! Call the judge! Tell them you lied! Now I was genuinely scared. Drunk and desperate was bad enough, but drunk and desperate with a weapon was potentially fatal. Put the knife down, Evan. This isn't going to solve anything. It'll solve my problem with you. He lunged at me with the knife, but his coordination was shot. I grabbed his wrist and twisted, using his own momentum to slam him into the refrigerator. The knife clattered to the floor. Evan slumped against the refrigerator, all the fight gone out of him. He started crying, big, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. "My kids won't even talk to me," he said. "My wife changed your number. I lost my job, my house, everything. All because of some stupid affair that didn't even mean anything." I picked up the knife and put it back in the drawer, then called 911. "This is Jack Anderson at 47 Maple Street. I need police here immediately. Someone broke into my house and threatened me with a weapon." Evan looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "You're really going to have me arrested? You broke into my house and pulled a knife on me. What did you think was going to happen?" The police arrived within 5 minutes. They arrested Evan for breaking and entering, assault, and threatening with a dangerous weapon. As they put him in the back of the patrol car, he looked at me through the window with pure hatred. I didn't care anymore. I was tired of being the victim, tired of being the target, tired of people thinking they could destroy my life without consequences. It was time to end this once and for all. 6 months later, I was sitting in the same diner where this whole thing had started, drinking coffee and reading the Portland Press-Herald. The headline on the local section made me smile. "Former Morrison consultant sentenced to 2 years probation in harassment case." Clara had been convicted of filing false police reports and perjury after the district attorney's office investigated her criminal complaint against me. The evidence Sarah and I had compiled proved that Clara had lied under oath about several key facts, including the timeline of her affair and her knowledge of Megan's insurance policy plan. Megan had been censured by the Maine Bar Association for her role in the scheme and was facing her own criminal charges for conspiracy and witness tampering. Evan had pleaded guilty to the break-in charges and was sentenced to 6 months in jail and mandatory alcohol counseling. His ex-wife had filed a restraining order, keeping him away from their children until he completed treatment. As for me, the divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Clara got to keep her car and her personal belongings. I got everything else: the house, the retirement accounts, the kids' college funds, and most importantly, my reputation. Ross and Amelia had eventually come around once they saw all the evidence and understood what their mother had really been planning. It took time, and there were some difficult conversations, but they understood that I'd been protecting myself and them from Clara's manipulation. My job had survived the scandal, partly because my boss, Richard, thought the whole thing was hilarious. "Best presentation I've ever seen," he told me. "Completely inappropriate, but brilliant marketing strategy." I'd even started dating again, a woman named Jennifer who worked at the local library and had never heard of Clara Anderson or Morrison Consulting. She thought my story was terrible, but admired how I'd fought back against people who were trying to destroy me. "Most people would have just taken it," she said over dinner last week. "They would have let themselves be the victims and never fought back." "I'm not most people," I said. "No, you're definitely not." As I sat in the diner finishing my coffee and thinking about how much my life had changed, Dolores came over with the pot for a refill. "You look better," she said. "Less like someone stole your dog." "The dog came back," I said, "and it brought friends." She laughed and refilled my cup. "Good for you, honey. Good for you." I left a big tip and walked out into the Portland morning. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the victim, not the target, not the man whose wife had betrayed him and tried to destroy him. Just Jack Anderson, survivor of the war Clara had started and I had finished. I got in my car and drove toward my new life, leaving the wreckage of the old one behind me forever.